Okay, let's jump right into this. Picture this scene. May 29, 2025, right there in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
The air is electric, and the news just broke. Elon Musk, the guy who builds rockets and electric cars, is out of the Trump administration.
And you're absolutely right. This wasn't some quiet slip out the back door. This was very public, a
Yeah.
real split, tangled up with a massive piece of spending legislation.
Exactly. A big bill making its way through Congress. So the mission for our deep dive today is to take all the material you've gathered on the reports, interviews, background pieces, and really unpack it.
Yeah, pull it all apart.
We want to understand the story behind Musk's, well, surprisingly brief and often chaotic time working inside the government.
Right?
Figure out the core reasons for this very public exit and really get to grips with what it all means for the key players and, beyond.
We're going to pull out those essential nuggets, look at the surprising twists, and understand the bigger picture here. Make sure you get the key insights without getting lost in all the noise.
Okay. To really grasp this exit, we have to rewind a bit.
Yeah, you got to go back.
Think back to just after the 2024 election. Donald Trump's heading back to the White House, and one of his big moves, bringing in Elon Musk.
The world's richest man, arguably most famous businessman, to shake things up, supposedly.
It was a partnership that, well, it raised a lot of eyebrows right from the start, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Musk was tapped to lead something they call the Department of Government Efficiency. And yes, they actually went with the acronym DOGE.
DOGE, like the meme coin.
Yeah.
I mean, that detail itself tells you a little something about the whole flavor of this venture. It launched with a lot of fanfare back in November 2024.
And the ambition was just staggering. The stated goal, cut $2 trillion from the federal budget.
$2 trillion.
By July 2026. Now, put that in perspective. The entire fiscal 2024 budget was around, what, $6.8 trillion?
So nearly a third of the budget in less than 2 years.
Yeah, we're talking about trimming almost a third. It's huge.
That's an eye-watering target. And Musk wasn't flying solo on this, right? He was working alongside Vivek Ramaswamy.
That's right. Now, it's worth remembering Musk's formal role, it was always temporary by design. He was brought in as a special government employee, an SGE.
SGE, okay.
And federal regulations typically limit those roles to about 130 days within a 365-day period. So his time was technically scheduled to wrap up somewhere around late May, early June 2025 anyway.
Right.
But, I mean, given Musk's history, his personality, I don't think anyone really expected him to just quietly see out that specific time frame without, some fireworks.
Okay, so what finally triggered this very public breakup? It seems to center on one specific piece of legislation, the one winding its way through Washington. They were calling it the One Big Beautiful Bill Act.
Seriously, the One Big Beautiful Bill. It was the administration's push to bundle several major priorities into a single package. So you saw elements like sweeping tax relief proposals for individuals and businesses. And, critically, a significant increase in funding directed towards border security and speeding up deportations.
So far, sounds pretty aligned with campaign promises. But here's the rub, the part that caused the friction. The bill also included a provision to raise the federal debt ceiling by $4 trillion.
And that became the lightning rod for Musk. His criticism came swift and sharp. The day before the announcement, May 28th, he was on CBS, and he delivered this line. It was pretty memorable.
What did he say?
He said, "I think a bill can be big or it could be beautiful, but I don't know if it could be both."
Wow. Okay, so not pulling punches there. He actually called it a massive spending bill.
Correctly. Said it fundamentally undermined the whole DOGE mission, cutting waste, bringing efficiency.
That's quite the public criticism.
Oh, yeah. And the responses from the administration the next day, May 29th, are really telling. President Trump acknowledged he was, quote, not happy about certain aspects, thrilled by others, but emphasized the bill, quote, got a way to go.
Hedging a bit.
Right. Meanwhile, House Speaker Mike Johnson, he praised DOGE's efforts, promised future cuts, but he stressed keeping Senate changes minimal to protect what he called the bill's delicate balance.
So this bill was clearly a political hot potato, just past the House, being debated in the Senate. And then Musk drops this bomb. It completely fits his style, doesn't it? That non-subtle, disruptive approach.
Absolutely. Remember that image of him with the chainsaw?
Oh, yeah, from Argentina's President Milei.
Holding it up on stage like this is how we cut bureaucracy. That same energy just brought straight into D.C.
So what was actually going on inside this Department of Government Efficiency, this DOGE, before the blow-up?
Well, reports suggest Musk and Ramaswamy really did hit the ground running back in November 2024.
Right. By February 2025, it seemed like they were actively engaged. There were reports describing them as having raided 15 federal agencies.
Yeah, raided, digging into data systems, looking for places to find those big savings.
And they weren't just like observing, they took direct actions. We saw reports about shutting down diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. That was a big one.
DEI programs. They also targeted entire agencies like the Department of Education for potential closure and apparently gained access to sensitive Treasury Department data.
Which predictably got really different reactions. Some people saw DOGE as this potentially powerful tool to finally get a handle on government spending, right?
Rein things in.
But others were deeply concerned. Some economists describe these actions as an erosion of democracy, feeling it just bypassed established processes. It felt very rapid, almost aggressive.
And the claims coming out of DOGE were just enormous. Musk himself stated they were saving an incredible $4 billion a day.
$4 billion a day, seriously.
That's what he claimed, and said they were on track to cut $1 trillion from the deficit annually. But, when you dug into the details, especially that wall of receipts.
The public tally of savings.
Exactly. Reports started showing it was, let's say, riddled with inaccuracies. For instance, one figure, $170 billion in savings, described as optimistic or highly questionable. The actual verifiable impact seemed much less concrete than the headlines.
And there was significant backlash brewing, wasn't there? Protests.
Protests, some even targeting Tesla directly. Musk himself mentioned cars being smashed or burned, which he said was, quote, not super fun.
I imagine not.
And you had lawmakers, advocacy groups, raising alarms that essential services were being cut. Federal workers reported feeling pushed to resign, programs frozen, or just axed outright.
It sounds less like surgical efficiency and more like a wrecking ball approach.
That's how some described it, causing widespread disruption. And interestingly, we even saw hints from Musk himself early on. By March 31st, 2025, he told Fox News he was feeling spread too thin, already suggesting he might be considering an exit down the line.
Okay, so let's connect the dots here. We know his SGE status was temporary anyway. It had an end date. But the timing of this public exit right after slamming this major bill, that feels significant. Why that moment? Let's peel back those layers.
Absolutely. Beyond the official timeline, there was this fundamental ideological clash emerging. Musk had really cultivated this image, right? The ultimate cost cutter, the efficiency guru coming to drain the swamp.
Yeah, the anti-bureaucracy guy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the administration's big legislative priority was this massive spending bill that actually raised the deficit.
It's a huge contradiction.
It's incredibly difficult to stand for aggressive cost-cutting while your team is pushing a bill that adds $4 trillion to the national debt. It just doesn't compute.
Yeah, that image doesn't hold. And then there's the personal dynamic. You've got two very large personalities.
Both love the spotlight.
Initially, they seemed, well, some described it as thick as thieves. Musk was visible at Mar-a-Lago and stuff, but reports indicated clashes were happening behind the scenes.
Oh, yeah. There was that really vivid report about a shouting match in the West Wing with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent.
Seriously? A shouting match?
Apparently within earshot of visiting dignitaries, including Italy's Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni.
Wow. Imagine being a fly on that wall. The tension must have been incredible.
Right. And as some analysts pointed out, President Trump is someone who, quote, cannot stand to be upstaged.
Good point.
Musk's high-profile role, his very outspoken nature, that was always likely to create friction in that dynamic.
And we also can't ignore the business pressures Musk was facing personally, right? By May 2025, Tesla was reportedly struggling.
Yeah, sliding sales numbers, profits were down. Reports suggested Musk himself was maybe $100 billion poorer than just a few months before.
That's a staggering number. And his very public political role seemed to be hurting the Tesla brand.
It appeared so, especially in places like California. People were apparently putting those bumper stickers on their Teslas.
Oh, the "don't blame me, I bought this car before Trump's election" ones.
Exactly. That level of, passive-aggressive protest tells you something about the brand impact.
Definitely. And maybe just fundamentally, Musk was genuinely done with the whole DC thing.
I think that's a big part of it. He reportedly told the Washington Post that dealing with the federal bureaucracy was, quote, much worse than I realized. It's an uphill battle trying to improve things in D.C.
Sounds like he hit a wall.
Yeah, like realizing the sheer scale of the challenge was maybe more than he bargained for or wanted to keep fighting. And remember, he had hinted at winding down his political engagement earlier that month, too,
Where was that?
at a Bloomberg forum in Doha, Qatar, May 20th. He said he planned to do a lot less politically and mentioned he'd spent, what, $250 million to help elect a president.
Wow.
It really suggests he felt he'd made his contribution, paid his dues maybe, and was ready to step back.
So what's the ripple effect, this high-profile exit?
Yeah.
What does it mean for everyone involved now?
Well, for President Trump, he loses a certain kind of heat shield, you could say.
How so?
Musk, by being so visible and often controversial, he absorbed a lot of the criticism directed at DOGE's methods.
Okay, I see.
Now, that scrutiny and potentially more lawsuits challenging DOGE's actions might fall more directly onto the administration itself.
Though Trump seems pretty comfortable with controversy.
Oh, absolutely. He seems to navigate it fine, and he's even hinted at challenging constitutional term limits. So, yeah, not someone who shies away from a fight.
And what about DOGE itself? The department.
It continues. Speaker Johnson, Vivek Ramaswamy, they're still involved. But the key question is, can it maintain the same level of energy? And maybe more importantly, visibility.
Without Musk's star power.
Exactly. Without his unique brand of disruption driving it, his departure could significantly diminish its public profile and maybe its perceived influence.
Makes sense. And for Musk himself.
For Musk, this means a return to focusing squarely on his businesses. Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, XAI, the whole suite.
Back to his empire.
Right. He faces challenges, no doubt,
Yeah.
especially with Tesla's brand image, his own highly polarized public persona now. But I mean, if we know one thing about Musk,
He knows how to control the narrative.
he's a master of narrative control. He'll likely find a way to spin this exit into something that looks like a win for whatever he does next.
And for you, the public, listening to this, it's a really complex picture, isn't it? On one hand, that core idea, cutting government waste, increasing efficiency, it resonates with a lot of people.
Sure does.
But the methods reportedly used by DOGE, they raised serious questions about transparency, accountability, the impact on essential services.
Yeah, the how matters.
And the whole debate over the big, beautiful bill itself, it kind of underscores this broader tension in politics. Can you get bold reform without significant costs, not just financial costs, but potentially costs to, establish democratic norms and processes?
And it's fascinating, too, how this story played out beyond U.S. borders. Countries around the world were watching Musk's government role really closely.
Absolutely. We saw interest from places like India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. Remember India's Prime Minister Modi met Musk in D.C. back in February?
Right, February 2025, directly trying to court Tesla and get them to build factories there.
Yeah. And then Bangladesh and Sri Lanka granting Starlink licenses.
Yeah, betting on his tech for their internet infrastructure. His political sort of entanglement and then the messy exit here in the U.S., it might make some of those countries pause.
Think twice about relying too heavily on him.
Exactly. Relying on someone whose political standing can shift so dramatically, so quickly. There's a volatility factor there now.
And we shouldn't forget the Golden Dome project, that massive defense initiative.
Oh, yeah, the space-based missile defense system. Reported $10 billion project.
SpaceX is positioned as a major frontrunner, right? For launching this satellite constellation for detection, maybe interception.
Big plans.
His political standing post-DOGE could absolutely impact SpaceX's chances there, securing that huge contract against competitors like Boeing.
Especially with ongoing geopolitical tensions, places like Pakistan, Iran. The need for missile defense tech is high. So yeah, his political baggage could definitely play a role. Look, amidst all the serious politics, the high stakes, you just have to admit there's a layer of sheer absurdity to this whole thing. It's almost comical.
Oh, absolutely. A billionaire tech CEO, Mr. Rockets and electric cars, comes in to run a government department.
And they name it DOGE after a mean crypto.
It sounds like something out of, Veep or Silicon Valley, but it actually happened.
It's like casting Tony Stark to run the DMV, but somehow even more surreal. I don't know.
And the chainsaw. We have to mention the chainsaw again. It wasn't a metaphor.
No. Argentina's president actually gave him a working chainsaw.
And he just held it up on stage like, this is how we cut bloat.
It actually happened. You couldn't make it up.
And the bill's name, the One Big Beautiful Bill,
For $4 trillion legislation. It sounds like a diner order.
Yeah, I'll take the big beautiful bill side of tax cuts, please.
Exactly.
And those California bumper stickers, don't blame me, I bought this car before Trump's election. That's just peak passive-aggressive protest. The cars themselves are pleading neutrality.
So there you have it, our deep dive into the story of Elon Musk's brief, very loud, and ultimately dramatic departure from the Trump administration.
Quite the spectacle,
Yeah.
full of unexpected turns. A bit like watching one of his rocket launches, maybe. Sometimes they work, sometimes. Not exactly as planned.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. The show certainly continues for President Trump, for DOGE itself, and definitely for Musk. But the dynamics have definitely shifted.
For sure. And for you, listening, this whole saga leaves us with some really compelling questions to think about, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, what does this episode truly tell us about the challenges of trying to apply that rapid Silicon Valley entrepreneurial disruption model to the complex, deeply entrenched machinery of government bureaucracy? Can it even work?
That's the big question. And maybe even more critically, what does it highlight about the amount of influence, the access, that private wealth and celebrity figures should really have in shaping public policy?
Yeah. How much is too much? It's certainly something worth pondering long after this conversation ends.